Lesson 5, the letter R. Lisa, I'm really going to need your help on this lesson because for me, pronouncing the letter R in German is quite a challenge. So, are you ready to continue?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so in English, the typical way that we say an R sound is we raise our tongue to the top of our mouth, the roof area, and we say er. As we say here in the book, we talk about the word red. And so when we say the word red, we lift our tongue up to the top and we say red. And so what we need to do is get the listeners to realize that they're not going to be saying that kind of R, generally speaking,
Yes.
in German. They have to figure out an authentic German way to pronounce the letter R.
Mm-hmm. So when you're describing where you pronounce the R, which part of the tongue are you using?
When I say the letter R?
Yes.
I guess I'm flattening maybe the front, the tip of my tongue. I'm kind of flattening it against the roof of my mouth. Like that.
Yes, and I think the sides of the tongue are touching the roof mouth.
Yeah. Now that you mention it.
Yeah. So when you say red, the front of the tongue is involved. When I say rot, it's actually the back of my tongue that is lifting up, not the front. I like the comparison you do with the gargling. So if you imagine you're gargling water, you would use that back part of your tongue if you just think about it for a second and imagine yourself in the bathroom gargling water.
Or I could gargle my coffee, I guess.
Yes, that's the part you want to try to use for the R. It's going to be a challenge, so don't give up too quickly.
So for our listeners at home, what we're saying here is when you see the word rot in German, the R-O-T, don't say rot. Don't make the R like an English sounding R, like wrote, because that's totally wrong.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Correct.
This R sound we're talking about is the same one that's in French. It's when you speak French, you say the R in the back of your throat like Paris.
Yes.
You don't say Paris. Say the gargling kind of R, like Paris.
Yes.
So
I think it's very similar.
So French and German are similar in that one way, in the sense that they both have that back of the throat kind of R sound.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And some of our listeners may have studied Spanish, in which they roll the R, like burrito,
Mm-hmm.
So for those who have studied Spanish, keep in mind that it's not a rolled R, and it's also not the English sounding kind of R. It's in the back of the throat. So this is a big concept that I want our listeners to understand at the very beginning of the book, so they can try to avoid this pitfall. So the R sound we just now talked about, that is primarily at the beginning of a syllable, when you're starting out a syllable with an R sound. Lisa, tell us about what happens when the letter R is at the end of a syllable.
So when you have it at the end, often together with an E, right? ER at the end of German words, you would have it more like an ah sound. So you don't really pronounce the R. You can, of course, stress it, but the normal speaker in everyday life would just say ah. So I think the example in this chapter is Vater.
Okay, so for our listeners, observe how Lisa is saying the R at the end in a kind of an open way. She's not saying Vater with an sound. That's incorrect.
Yes.
It's an open R kind of sound. So
yes, and very much unstressed. Vater. Is it similar to sister? Like, how would you say sister? Would you pronounce the R?
Well, it depends on. That's actually a good question. In English, we have two kinds of pronunciation for final R, and it's related to the Greek word for the letter of the Greek alphabet that makes an R sound, and that's the letter rho, R-H-O. So in English, we have rhotish pronunciation, that's R-H-O-T-I-S-H, rhotish, and non-rhotish. So rhotish pronunciation is English pronunciation in which you pronounce the R at the end. Like if I say the word water in English, if I say water, then I just now said the R at the end. But if I'm from certain parts of the country, I might say wada. You know, instead of car, I might say ka. Park the car. You know, if I'm from Boston, I might say park the car. So we kind of have, in English, we have two flavors of pronunciation when it comes to the final R. So for some of you out there, if you're in the non-rhotish category, if you're already accustomed to not pronouncing final R, this will be easy for you. But if you're like me and you pronounce the R at the end of a word, you'll have to make an adjustment and learn to pronounce this open sort of R sound at the end. This is true not only when R comes at the end of a word, but when it comes at the end of a syllable, like in the word Arnold, right?
Yes, Arnold.
So the word Arnold, the A and the R, they make up the first syllable. So there's two syllables. A-R makes the first syllable, and then N-O-L-D is the second syllable. So the letter R ends the first syllable. Since it's at the end of a syllable, it's going to get that open R sound, right, Lisa?
Yes, that's right.
Could you say that word for us with a nice German accent?
Arnold.
Okay, so Lisa's not saying Arnold, she's saying Arnold, right? With a kind of an open sound.
Yes. And with a T at the end, of course.
The voiceless D, which basically turns it into a T sound. Let me see if I can do it with the correct pronunciation. Arnold.
That's not bad.
Well, you're really building my self-esteem here. I know that I'm really harping on this. I'm really going to a lot of trouble to talk about this. And I'm probably repeating myself a lot. But I'm doing it for a reason, because I really, really want our listeners, I want them to just get this from the beginning so they don't have to unlearn it, so they don't learn it the wrong way and then have to fix it later.